I'm going to tell a story today because I'll bet that about 99% of us in this room were born or brought up in this sport, and we all had a racing hero that influenced along the way. I'm thrilled to be presenting my lifelong racing hero, a guy by the name of Fred Borden. It's hard to believe that such a quiet, unassuming guy, a welder by trade, could be such a champion-winning race car driver in an era of strong-willed, tough guy, wheel wrestling drivers. Starting out when stock cars were stealing the thunder from the midgets at local short tracks, especially in New England, this guy Freddie Borden was proving to be a natural. Legend has it that almost immediately he was dominating the jalopy divisions at long-gone tracks northwest of Boston. In fact, he won so many races at the old Medford Bowl, they put a bounty on his head. It was there in the early 50s that he caught the eye of champion engine builder and Hall of Famer Bill Welch. Welchie and Dave Morton had been building some of the more potent flatheads of the day, and one of those engines was in my father's cut down that had its seat coming open due to the retirement of the great Joe Ross. Borden agreed to come aboard near Hall of Famer John Falcone's red number 10, and this relatively unknown driver from Waltham, Mass, would join the premier divisions, or the premier division at tracks like Norwood, Westboro, Peabody, and Lonsdale. Top 5 finishes were almost immediate, and victories weren't far behind. In the late 50s, when my father gave up his cars in favor of promoting the races at Westboro, Thompson, Peabody, and Brookline, New Hampshire, Freddie took rides in cars fielded by Marty Hardy and a somewhat thought to be radical at the time creation by Andy Smith from the North Shore of Massachusetts. Car actually that Jimmy Martell ended up owning and racing, who's going into the Hall of Fame today. Freddie won in those cars too. In the winter of 1962, he was asked to return to the familiar Falcone red number 10, this time in a Morton Welch flathead powered full coupe at Westboro and Brookline, built by the next generation, my older brother Rick Falcone and a crew of his high school buddies. On opening night, April 21st, 1962, was his first test in this new car. He finished second to Seekonk ace Dee Castell, who's going into the Hall of Fame today, who was running Westboro till the conch opened for the season. But Freddie won the next week and kept on winning and winning at Westboro and Brookline. More features than anyone else at both places in 1962. 28 features in 1963. 17 out of 25 in another season. Before he was done, he'd won the Class A championship in 1962, 63, 65, 66, and 67. Missing only the 1964 season when a business obligation kept him out. Hall of Famer Reino Tolonen subbed for him that year and kept up the tradition by winning the most features and the championship in Borden's regular ride. In the season of 1967, when the flatheads were gone and the cars were overhead powered, chopped and channeled again, he had a couple of bad crashes. One due to a stuck throttle and another in a multi-car pileup. But through late night efforts by himself and Rick's crew, they were back the next Saturday night. And they were back in victory lane, winning 10 features in 20 starts that year. But the clock was ticking. And at the young age of 12, I remember very vividly overhearing a conversation between Freddie and Bill Welch late in the 1967 season. Freddie said that the cars were going faster, but his reaction time was not. And he said, quote, "I'm going to get done at the end of the season." Well, I was devastated. I just heard my hero say he was hanging it up. He collected the Champions Trophy again and at that fall banquet, putting another mark on his accomplished record. And then he faded away. All those championships and all those wins, in fact, more wins at Westboro Speedway than anyone else, a record that stood right through the track's closing in 1985. Now, you never saw him at the track after that, and I don't know how much he followed racing from then on, but I know that in the late 90s, he was having lunch at a popular place on the seacoast of New Hampshire, and he overheard a conversation between a racing newspaper writer and a fan about guys that were winning at local tracks. Uncharacteristically, Freddie spoke up and told him that he was pretty good in his day and proceeded to tell the story. But I'm sure not as detailed as I've told it today. He was invited by the writer to go to a race at Lee, New Hampshire. I was working there as the announcer and was summoned to the press box to, quote, see someone I knew. And when I finally made it over there, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was my hero. And after all these years, I finally got to talk to him man to man, asked him a million questions during a conversation that I never wanted to end. 40 years had passed and he was still humble and almost unaccepting of the accolades that I poured on him because of his accomplishments. Gushing about him to the other members of the press in the room. I'm sure I embarrassed him, but hey, this was my hero I was talking about. The guy I watched slice through the field almost stealth-like, coming from the back week after week. Then take that victory lap with the checkered flag around the ovals probably 100 times. And now, one more accomplishment, and maybe the biggest of all. My hero, and more importantly, one of New England's best race drivers, is going into the near Hall of Fame. And that is the great Freddie Borden. Freddie couldn't be with us today. He lives in Florida these days and unable to make the trip, but a good member of his family are here to accept the award, and I'd like to introduce his daughter Diane to accept the Hall of Fame award for Fred Borden.
Thank you. First of all, Peter, this wasn't going to be this hard till after you got up and spoke. And I thank you very much for that, for bringing back all the memories. I enjoyed it. And I want to say congratulations to all the previous Hall of Famers. And I'd like to congratulate those coming in today. Of course, especially my father. He couldn't be here, but he made sure that I had some words to say from him. I'm sorry I cannot be here. Of all places I would like to be is here at this time. But due to medical needs, it's impossible. So I've asked my daughter Diane to speak for me. I want to thank all of you who were involved in making this honor happen, and to have it happen while I'm still around to receive it. If it weren't for Peter Falcone, Ricky Falcone, and the Falcone brothers, this would not be happening. So I say thank you to everyone for this honor of becoming a part of the New England Auto Racers Hall of Fame. Thank you all very much for this.